everybody. Welcome to today's MediaWorks Masterclass. We're going to be covering everything SEO. My name's David Norris. I'm the Group Operations Director here at MediaWorks, and today I've got the delight of having Jack with us. So Jack, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Jack. I'm the Organic Search Director. Been at MediaWorks for just over a year and have just over a decade's experience in SEO and search marketing.
So as we know, SEO is a massive topic, and we've got lots of slides, lots of information, lots of content to throw people as we go through today. So we're going to be giving people a very top line overview of where SEO is at from our perspective. What I would like to say though, just from the outset, is I'd like to say that we've got a free SEO audit that we'd like to exclusively offer to anybody that's dialing in. So if you want at any point as you're going through the session to find out a bit more about your own SEO performance through some of the tools that we have access to, then obviously just register by clicking on the link in the chat. I'll raise this at the end as well, but again, just to flag as we go. Any questions that you want to ask as well, just put into the chat and we'll try and deal with those at appropriate times as we go through today's session.
Right, so just a bit of audience participation, I guess. We've obviously taken around 50% of the people that have signed up for this session, and just based on people's email addresses or domains, had a look at the general performance. And yeah, hopefully kind of really engages you, and then actually in terms of what we're saying, will have some sort of benefit. But what we found is about on average, people have lost around 6,000 keywords in the last 3 months, as well as dropped visibility for searches of around 4 million in the last 3 months as well. So hopefully, like we said, something in this session will resonate, and there'll be definitely something you can take away or try to implement, or again, think about when you are considering your SEO strategy.
Yeah, and I think what we'd say, Jack, is it's always moving, isn't it, SEO? That's what keeps us excited about the SEO space. It's constantly evolving. I think of where we've been historically over the last decade, in the time that you've been involved in SEO, to even the changes that we've seen recently, which we'll talk about as we go through today's session. So, we constantly see keywords moving up and down, etc. And it's just really today we're going to cover some around the best practice and the basic principles of how to address some of that and how to consider where you sit in this process.
No, exactly. So the first thing we're going to look at is just an overarching picture of our SEO maturity model. And this is just the process that we take when we look at kind of optimizing SEO at a very fundamental level, starting with technical, content, offsite, and then moving through for advancement as well.
Yeah, and that's how we've decided to structure today's session, isn't it? Into that technical piece, or key call outs, key lookouts there, into one site, then focusing on the offsite element, and then we'll talk about, as you said, that advancement piece, and we'll talk about elements of AI and what are the new things that we're seeing in the space, because as I say, this is constantly evolving. So I think the place to start then really is that technical area, Jack. So when I think about sort of technical, do you want to walk us through some of the key aspects of technical and what we mean when we say technical, I guess?
Yeah, no worries. I think it's one of those where, yeah, as David just said, it's the start. And I think at the start of the start, where we will look at, which is a bit extreme, I think these days, is talking about like manual penalties. So again, probably more common back in the day where Google would, say you got a manual penalty, or we're not going to index you because you're trying to kind of influence the algorithm, maybe through kind of poor backlinking strategies, duplicate content, thin content.
Cheating the system, basically, yeah.
Exactly. So again, not so common these days, but again, that is like the first step. You have a manual penalty, nothing you do really is then going to kind of make an impact. We then really talk about access and crawling. So that's then obviously, can Google or can search engines access your content? Can they crawl it, and then can they index it? Yeah. And really technical is all about that. Can it see your content, and then can it return it in the index for the the terms and targets that you have?
Yeah, and I think, again, we're going to wait on the next section, but I think it's really important to understand this, isn't it, that Google really operates as a business. Like, and again, it's about that giving the user the experience that they want in terms of making sure that when they put in a search, they're returned with, quote, the best information possible.
Yeah, exactly. It leads on to this point around, Google's aim is to provide a market-leading experience, but its revenue comes through the paid channels.
Yeah.
So while, SEO, organic search is there to bring users in, they convert them and make money off them through their paid channels, paid services, whether that's YouTube, Google, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And again, technical really applies to this, because when we're talking about the best results from a technical perspective, heavy pages with large files, large load times, have a commercial impact on Google in terms of it costs them more resources to actually process our data.
Yeah, and that's the thing, isn't it? When you think of the scale of what they're actually processing in terms of the volumes of data, this is where Google has massive costs. And I think people often don't consider that as part of the process. I think they see it from just very much a consumer's perspective, but from a Google perspective, they're constantly going through the process of crawling websites, indexing, which involves massive amounts of energy and data ultimately.
Yeah, it kind of makes it a very easy concept to understand. If you're saving Google money, it's going to show you more often. Yeah, quite simply. So really just going into technical foundations then, in terms of our kind of key areas. Again, we kind of have 4, but I would say, some are more important than the others. But the first one, as we just said, is about this site accessibility, is the crawling and indexing of your data. And then we have things like, speed and core web vitals, which are equally as important in terms of driving good user experience. Yeah. Also that mobile friendliness, which again, we say mobile, but it's really just the device, accessibility on multiple devices, whatever that might be, a phone, tablet, desktop.
Yeah, because we've all seen it, haven't we? We've all seen content whereby it's not done from a mobile friendly perspective, and it literally then you're having to scroll across a mobile device to find the different, it's horrible experience. And again, that costs money in terms of time, energy, effort to do so, and detracts from the user experience. So you can see why Google considers factors like that.
Yeah, 100%. I think it was when, we had 3G, moving to 4G, it was all about, well, your 3G contract was, £10 for 100 megabytes. So you can't, press that day. Anyway. And then finally, internal linking and structure. So again, how we use internal links to drive kind of relevancy as well as that kind of authority through the site. Yeah. Just some kind of common pitfalls then here, and just kind of why it's a problem and quick fixes. We won't go through them all, but just the top ones. So kind of, blocking crawling. Again, if search engines can't actually access a page, whether that's through a manual penalty, through no internal links, then the actual content is not going to get indexed, it's not going to get found. We have other things there like, slow page speeds, where again, affects the user experience, affects kind of softer metrics, which then may have an impact on your rankings because if people are bouncing, if people aren't seeing the content, then obviously user experience is poor. And Google does take that into account when we are talking about kind of placements in SERPs. And then things like duplicate content, as well as kind of orphan pages. Again, that's when we're not giving clear signals to Google about what page we want returned. So for example, you may have 2 close variant products or 2 close variant services. Again, can they be kind of amalgamated into one, or do they need to be kind of separated even further? So again, that is that confusion, I guess, is what we're then trying to remedy.
Yeah, and I think that the call out here for me would be, it's so important that you get these right. If you don't get these right, the impact is absolutely disproportionate. Like in terms of, yes, you might not have the best DPR strategy, but ultimately, if you aren't findable on Google and you haven't got a website that functions from Google's perspective, even if you're sat there and thinking, right, well, my website actually works because I know where to find the information and I think about a user's experience, but actually, if it's not technically sound from an SEO perspective, ultimately you are sort of disproportionately impacting everything else that you're going to do from an SEO perspective. I'd actually broaden it out and say, though, you're quite likely to be impacting things like your paid activity as well, and just generally user experience across the site. Yeah,
100%. It's basically your ticket into the venue. You're not going to be in the venue if you literally don't get a ticket in, and this is that. So that's the idea. Just some kind of key technical issues then. Again, it's very similar to what we talked about, but it is that crawling indexation, speed from a usability point of view, that kind of cross-device usage. As I said, we're not in a single device world anymore. People have desktops, laptops, tablets, mobile phones, even TVs now, be smart TVs. The internal linking point around actually all of our pages should be linking in a clear and concise way. And again, a lot of things we do in terms of our optimization is really pushing people down, or customers, to the conversion points we want them to be in. So actually highlighting our most visited pages, our highest conversion pages through internal linking. Another big one for kind of more enterprise level clients is index bloat. So again, if you have a lot of products, thousands of products, are you creating or generating thousands of URLs for close variants or different versions of the same product? And again, if you're crawling 100 URLs where instead of doing one, then again, you're just creating that bloat, which obviously is not inefficient.
Yeah, and it's always that balance, isn't it? It's a balance between having distinct URLs that are actually adding to the user experience where we can drive people to get the right information, versus that bloated element where, again, Google's going to go, well, actually, you could do this more efficiently, and you're costing us as a business money. And I think that's the real fine balance that you've always got to consider.
No, exactly. So the next section then, after kind of, yeah, as I said, setting up the technical, having Google crawl your kind of site, is then finding, targeting the right terms and actually positioning ourselves towards terms which are going to drive value and not just kind of hold on to vanity metrics, which might just be high search volume, for example.
Yeah. So again, this really is, we start the process as we go through our maturity model. We think about keywords and targeting. Ultimately, what are we targeting, why we're targeting, what we're hoping to achieve with around those keywords. We'll talk a bit about things like informational, navigational, and functional content, and even that from a keyword perspective as well. So I think as we go through this, we'll really focus and hone down on why, understanding keywords volume, and then how you align your content with that, and actually even things like your site structure, etc. with that, why all of that plays a massive part.
No, definitely. Again, we've kind of done it there in terms of keywords first, then we move on to functional content, which is we define, which we'll go in a second, as our kind of money pages.
Yeah.
And then maybe navigational, so people looking for the brand, and, you know, saying a login page or an account page or a build.
Yeah.
And then finally, as you said, that informational point around actually top of funnel, how can we bring people in to our funnel? Again, he might be looking for similar products or a similar type of service.
Yeah. Yeah.
So again, types of keywords. So we have that transactional, which are kind of very self-explanatory. They're people looking to buy something, inquire about something, or even, you know, become a lead or whatever it might be. The navigational, which again, can kind of sit between informational and transactional. There may be a transactional element to it. So, you know, someone understanding they already are a consumer of a technology provider and they're looking for a certain page, or they know about a brand, you know, like their Nike's homepage, something like that.
Yeah.
Then we've got informational, which kind of is what it says on the tin. It is, you know, how-tos, what are's, those kind of things. And then I think the least, or one of the less kind of used one, but it's good to segment it out, is then commercial investigation. So again, we would do this a lot for, you know, a car brand, for example, or a clothing brand, in terms of, you know, Nike versus Adidas there, or what is the best, you know, football boot that Nike makes. You kind of know the brand you want, but there is still that informational element to it, and you're still making those decisions.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's about how we're finding the right keywords then. And I think, you know, we talked about it before in other masterclasses, and it's about that audience element. I think that is probably the most important. It's actually, what are your customers searching for, not what do you think they are searching for?
Yeah, and I think that's such an important point, that isn't it? Is really taking that step back and putting, you know, it sounds basic, but putting yourself in the shoes of the customer, because I think that too often people do this from, well, we know everything about the business, therefore what do we think people are going to be searching for? It's almost like, no, like, put yourself in the audience's shoes. What would you search for if you were in that perspective? You know, if you're working with an energy utilities company, like, what are the key things that they're going to be looking for? What makes their experience useful?
Exactly. And I think it's one of those as well. It's not just them, but it's, you know, it's the other parts of their lives as well. You know, for example, if we are targeting a certain industry or job title, it's actually, yes, they'll have a problem which maybe we can solve, but actually, what are their other problems? What other ways can we hook them into our ecosystem and really pull them in? Then prioritize them based on business goals. So again, is this keyword, are these terms, is the page we're targeting them at going to be lead gen? Is it more about content marketing? And then really figuring out, based on kind of your needs, where we need to be going. So is it about, you know, driving volume, or is it about driving, you know, hot, very much ready to purchase people? And again, understanding that will then enable you to understand what keywords to actually prioritize and go after first. And then lastly is about just being very careful around vanity metrics. I think, you know, search volume is definitely a bit of a red herring sometimes. Sometimes something can be very, very lucrative in terms of volumes, but actually in terms of intent, quite poor. Yeah, it's true, and we understand why that.
Yeah, and I think you often see that with really generic terms, don't you? You know, like shoes, dresses. You know, it's like, who's searching that and what's the intent behind that? You know, if you're further down the funnel and wanting to convert, think about it from your consumer perspective. You know, if you're wanting to play tennis, you know, we were talking about that earlier, but it's like, you know, you're way further down the funnel than that. You're not searching tennis racket, you're searching tennis racket with this brand, or tennis racket with this string tension, or tennis racket for beginners if you've got children playing, and all the rest of it. So it's about understanding that element and thinking about, right, that is much more valuable term than tennis rackets, which probably has a way higher search volume.
Yeah.
But
or even tennis, isn't it? If you're Wilson, there's not much point in ranking for tennis as a term.
No.
Yeah. And then, so then moving really to our kind of first stop in the kind of the content steps, let's say, is about functional content. This is typically where we start in a strategy, just because, like I said, these are our money pages. They're pages which drive conversion, drive product sales, drive leads, that kind of thing. So this is where we would always say, right, what keywords are we looking for on these type of pages, whether it is things like, size 4 grip tennis rackets, and really trying to get those keywords in first and those targets in first to drive ROI from SEO. And again, it's one of those where there are common issues. And I think probably the best one to talk about here is thin or duplicate content. If you think about product pages with different variants, what you'll often see is content which is either really small and not descript, which obviously then doesn't provide a great experience for the user, or Google or search engines when they're trying to find out or determine what your content's about. And then duplication, again, if you have various sizes of shoes or various sizes of rackets, then actually how we change that content product page to product page, again, that can be an issue. So then the other types of pages that we are talking about when we talk about functional, like we said, is product pages, but we also have category pages, which are, talking about football boots, your Nike Vapor Air Maxes, whatever it might be, and then your football boots category pages, that's it above that. You then got your lead gen pages, which again could be capturing signups or capturing any kind of user data. Then services, which again may be selling, car detailing, something like that. And then you have just general landing pages, which might be more brand led, but again, those are all functional pages which have a next step or something for somebody to purchase or fill in or convert on. Then we move into informational. So informational is then the supporting element of our content kind of strategy in terms of, driving top of funnel search interest visitors, but also from a relevancy point of view, really rounding off that targeting. So we're not just being commercial, we're actually satisfying some of that information intent, which then may push people to be more conversional kind of later on. But again, it really supports the overall strategy. And again, we'll come into it later, but it then really is the first building block for things like DPR and offsite activity as well. But yeah.
It gives your ability, doesn't it, I think, to broaden the depth of your content in particular in this area and really show, I think, expertise in particular areas as well. So I think, as you say, we talk about building authority and engagement. This is the stuff that I think makes people's websites sticky as well and makes the user experience on site something slightly different. And it's really where you can really get that things like tone of voice across and really can build out that brand personality aspect as well.
100%. And I think it's one of those where I always like to use the analogy is, if Google's a library and they're the librarian, a website's a book. If you said, okay, I want to start learning to fish, the librarian's going to find you a book which is, this thick on all the things how to fish and give you that. Similarly for Google, if you have all that information on your website, it would make sense that they go, okay, right, well, they're the be all and end all of fishing. Here's that, rather than going, okay, well, learn this one about what bait to use, this one about the reels to use, this one about the rods to use. It's going to give the main one with
the authoritative, the seminal piece.
Exactly. And then, breaking that down into the different pages or the different kind of elements that we have when we are effectively kind of optimizing for informational content, it is about that depth, as we've just said, around actually having enough content to satisfy the users, as well as kind of readability, internal linking. And then, a big thing that we will be talking about, just generally as an industry, I think, or we are still, is EEAT, expertise, experience, authority, trust. And then, that search intent matching. So when we are doing informational content, I think it's very important to say, if you're saying, the top 10, whatever it might be, the user will expect to see a top 10 list.
And I think on EAT, we have talked about that in the past, and we've done things like blog posts, etc. So again, I direct you to our website on that, because again, we've got a lot of content around that topic on there. So I guess, Jack, then that leads us into we've covered technical, we've then focused a bit on on-site and / content, and focused on keywords and the different types of content that people need to consider. You've used your library analogy, which I think is absolutely valid. Then the next bit, I think, which often people see is sort of that off-site element. And we split it, don't we, Jack, into outreach and digital PR, and we'll talk about how they're slightly different things as we go through this.
I think obviously we give a bit of an overview there, but it is, the outreach, I guess, while potentially an old hat term in the SEO world, you know, link building.
Yeah.
So doing kind of activity for links versus digital PR, which again is more, press related, more publication kind of targeted, a little bit broader in scope. We separate them just because, we see the value of both, but there are definitely two different strategies.
Yeah, I was going to say that as we go through this, we'll talk about the value of both, but they are slightly different things.
So straight into kind of, I guess, earning that link and how it really impacts visibility. I think just to set this up, it is about how, a backlink, how I've always explained it, is like a vote for your website.
Yeah.
Back in the day, it was obviously one of Google's primary factors when it talked about its algorithm and actually, how you influence rankings, hence why we had all those penalties back in the day and all that manipulation.
Yeah.
But it is, again, still a very, very strong signal and still, one that is massively a focus in all good SEO strategies. But it is about driving that kind of link and that kind of increase that digital footprint, let's say. But the strategies that we kind of employ are always on. So that is whether we're using data or whether we're using kind of articles or just generalized content of worth to push out to journalists and blogs and other publications, that kind of thing. Then talking about expertise and being an authoritative voice, so utilizing a brand or a position in a certain business to say, we have a unique and valid point on a subject matter, as well as also, again, something which we like to do is becoming a resource. So if you have a certain set of data or you have a certain set of expertise or anything, again, making it a digitally available piece for then people to link back to and actually drive that natural engagement, because that's quite nice, giving something away for potentially free and then having that kind of back and forth from
and I think we see so much opportunity in this area as well, don't we, for brands that we work with. And I think about that whole expertise and authoritative voice. It's so important increasingly that it's not just from a business, that it's actually from a person, and we build the profile of that individual within the business who becomes the voice in that space. Like, again, Google's becoming more and more sophisticated as it develops, and it knows as well, and we'll talk a little about it, things like AI, where it's that generalist, essentially like resynthesized content from somewhere versus what's the uniqueness, what's the point of difference that we're now giving the information out for versus we're just syndicating the content there.
I think that's an amazing point in terms of just where is the experience, where is the expertise that isn't just an aggregate of the top 10 articles and whatever it might be. But and as well, worth saying here, what doesn't work anymore, and I think, again, we test hundreds, thousands of things in our strategies, and what we see don't work is this kind of mass, low level kind of link building. Again, then the sheer quantity, I think, doesn't seem to have an impact these days. And that's something, again, which is a stark difference to when we were 10 years ago.
And I think that for me is about that contextualized piece. It's so important that we're building links and building authority in the right areas that actually matches that audience's experience. So, for example, if we're thinking about cars, there's no point in thinking about putting something in a I don't know, farming magazine. Do you know what I mean? It's like it needs to be contextually relevant. Because again, the sophistication's just gone up a level.
100%. So then, just talking about kind of effective ways of DPR and link acquisition, then it is about that kind of data-led. And I think that's where we're finding real big success is, DPR does kind of blend both depending on kind of the data sets we're talking. But where can we find unique value in things like FOIs and that kind of thing to actually support a story potentially that's happening already, or support or go against something as well? Then we've got that expert commentary and thought leadership, which again sits within probably DPR realms more so, just because it is more collaborative typically with a client and that kind of thing.
And it's the sort of thing that I think like the press are hungry for, aren't there, as well? Like the publications and other sort of publications, news outlets, etc. They're hungry for that unique perspective, not just that. They don't want Wikipedia content. They want that, I say, that whole EAT piece.
I think, again, it lends itself as well to like these kind of like micro influencers as well. You've got Matt Watson from Carwow, for example. Those kind of people, are influencing their own right, but they've started with a journalism almost angle. And then we have things like, creative campaigns, which are the big, typically brand activation, develop, maybe even microsite kind of elements. Then news jacking, which again is kind of potentially a couple of the other strategies like data-led and expert commentary, but again, inserting ourselves into those stories. And then lastly is the journalist requests, where obviously they will ask for commentary or a point around certain things.
So I guess the final bit that we wanted to cover was just some of those advancements. So again, this is the final stage in our sort of SEO maturity model, which we talk about things like thought leadership, new trends, new tech, sort of entity and niche targeting. I think we're going to focus a bit on AI today, aren't we, and what we're seeing in the search terms, because I think, again, people will be seeing how AI is being played out in Google. So we really wanted to showcase that amongst other things as we talk about things that people should be considering in that advancement stage.
Exactly. So yeah, I think to nobody's surprise, everyone will have seen it by now. It is just, you know, how AI overviews or AIOs are now overtaking quite a lot of informational searches in Google.
Yeah.
And how obviously they will be influencing click-through rates, and actually how, searchers are actually receiving data.
I read a statistic about this that actually said it was coming in. I think the latest statistic I saw was in the UK, it's about 6% it features in the search terms. I think they were saying in certain states in America where they've rolled this out, it's now up to 50% in certain areas. So I think, again, what I'd suggest here for people listening, watching, etc., is that like this is something that is evolving and evolving at pace and is being tested in terms of rolled out. And you'll have no doubt seen this in terms of when you're searching from a user perspective, you'll have seen this type of content in your face.
Yeah, and it is, again, the strategies that we're employing at the moment is very similar to something like featured snippets, or again, adapting our content to these kind of generative results. So that's something, again, we're focused on massively. And then really in terms of kind of answer engine optimization, it is just adapting to ecom. I think a good scenario here is actually how search bars may change on ecom. So rather than searching for something like, you know, blazers for Christmas party, you're going to search for Christmas party next week. What do you recommend me wearing? And then, you know, the websites are then going to have to reflect that search based on, you know, at the moment we'll use like a facet page to actually have inbuilt AI, something like that.
Yeah, and I think, again, these are things, aren't they, when we talk about like adopting AI and driven search and changing around in e-commerce, I think a lot of the general principles that we've talked about as we've gone through this session will 100% still apply and will still be used as the all, you know, we talk about the algorithm. I can't believe we've got so far in and not talked about Google's algorithm, but, you know, these are still the same principles that are influencing Google's algorithm. Nobody knows in what level they are influenced, but we know these are real contributing factors. But I think when we talk about AI and how that's influencing, all the things that we've said are still going to be absolutely relevant. When we're seeing the AI overviews appear, for example, that's still driven by an algorithm by Google, which is still essentially trying to serve people. If you go back to the point we started with, which was this is about Google serving the user with the best possible experience based on the search that they made. They don't want to give terrible information to people in an AI overview. They want to give them that high quality content. So I think that's where, instead of thinking of it as a game, it's almost a process, and that's why we, I think, map it out the way that we do.
Yeah, exactly. And it does tie back into that authoritative piece as well. It is that it's not just going to show any random, or it shouldn't show any random website. It's someone that has an authority in that subject matter and has the content to adapt to it.
So I guess today what we've covered is a lot of areas, Jack, in the sense that we've covered that technical piece, on-site, off-site advancement. Look, we know that there's a lot more out there. And look, we're talking about, do we come back and do an actual series on each of these areas to just give a bit more depth in some of these areas? But hopefully today's provided people with a useful overview of where to begin and where to really put your time, energy and effort, because honestly, often we see people start at the wrong end of this, or start right in the middle and they focus on content without really understanding the technical aspects. Like we start on the left, we work our way to the right, but it's an ever evolving process that we go through. And again, like as things change, as new website launches happen, sometimes a bit snakes and laddery. You have to go 2 steps forward, then go 1 step back and then rebuild again. And obviously, like Google reflects like consumer changes and consumption pattern changes. So again, it's like what people were searching for in one area last year will evolve inevitably over a period of time. So it's something that you're constantly refining, isn't it? And looking 100%. At what's moving, what's changing, like what areas do we need, and what areas become the battleground ultimately.
Yeah, 100%.
So We don't have time. Obviously, we're pressed for time. But what we will do is we can see lots and lots of questions have came in. But what we'll do is when we present this and we'll post this on our website, probably go out this afternoon, what we'll do is we'll categorize all those questions that we've received and provide answers through that. We'll try and get that done today. Might be into next week in terms of answering all the questions, because I know there's a large number that have came in. But yeah, as I say, thank you for posting those questions that won't go unanswered. What I wanted to finish with was just to say again, do reach out, do click on the link in the chat. And register for your free SEO audit. We'd be delighted to share with you some insights, some unique insights, and walk that through with Jack and Jack's wider team. So yeah, do reach out and register via the link. I guess all that's left to say is thank you very much for attending today's MediaWorks Masterclass. Thanks to Jack for coming along and talking about all things SEO. Thanks for everybody joining, watching, listening, everybody listening on catch up, etc. And I look forward to seeing everybody next month for another MediaWorks Masterclass. Thank you.
Thank you.